So, class 5, why are we here? Well, if you're here now, it's because you're a persevering student who has stuck with this class, so good job. But specifically, you're in this particular class on January 13th to create charismatic, compelling characters, so one day our robot overlords will spare us and we can interact at a higher caliber with good characters, and especially today, you get rewards. Okay. So we covered all of these before. Today we're going to do beliefs and personality. Now, the studio itself, where you're actually building the characters, has been changing over time. And so these are subsumed within different Legos within mostly the identity Lego. However, they are extremely critical to who your character is and how they behave. So I decided to dedicate this whole class to just these two principles, even though they constitute maybe max three prompts within the actual training process. So here we go. First, actually, we're going to do homework review from last class, from 104. 104's class was about occupation and drive. Very, very exciting stuff. You guys came up with really great homework. And this is where it'd be great to have like game show music. We're gonna give 1,000 tokens to people who did well. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and go to the responses I wrote down. Juliet, what did you think about the responses this time?
Yeah, we had an influx as soon as the special announcement was made. So yeah, no, they were great. I have one here if you want me to start off by reading one.
Sure.
Okay, this person says, original character, occupation, AI helping humans. In a way, it thinks of itself as too young to have an occupation. It's too new. It's practically just a baby. It still has so much to learn, but even a new AI can be helpful to humans, even as it is learning and improving. And the drive, this AI was programmed to help humans. It needs things from humans, such as electricity and updates, to remain operational and in good condition. It seeks to help humans so that it meets its purpose and continues to operate and improve. That was from Scott.
Nice. Okay. So human-centric. All right, let's see. I'm going to go over some that I have some notes for you and some that I thought were just great. Want to shout those out. Okay, so Meta Odom writes, existential psychologist by day and philosopher of individual agency by night. What I find interesting about this occupation is that usually when people say by day and by night, it's like very different things, like tax accountant by day and like superhero by night. But this is like a very similar thing by day and by night. So I would switch those up, or just not use the whole by day and by night framing. And then we've got a person named Guka, Guka, and this one I just, and excuse me, that's the person who wrote the by day and by night. So just FYI. For Son of Loss G, I'm not going to read your whole thing because it's very long, but it was very good and creepy. It was sort of a metaverse Alethea goddess. Great job. Alethea Noah Safe Moonman and user Big Hands Dan. Your descriptions were very, very good and intriguing, but too long and could be tighter. So you're definitely on the right track to think expansively, but I think for the next iteration, try to cut down a little bit. And then I'm going to get to somebody who I didn't have too many notes for, XCH Pets, XChupets, if you will. Occupation, first astronaut in the metaverse. He spends his time educating non-metaverse people about the importance of exploration in the metaverse. He also likes to golf on the dark side of the metaverse. Drive. He's so disappointed in not being the first human into space that he is obsessed with being the first at everything. His duty is to help others find what they can be number one at. That's a very interesting character, so bravo. All right, I'm going to move on to a couple. Okay, this one I really, really liked. Yeah, this one actually might win, I think might win one of the 1,000 tokens. I'm going to start reading it and then I'll say who the user is. It's an original character. Their occupation is it you? Maybe it's you. Everybody should be paying attention. Occupation, assistant research scientist for DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Extremely intelligent, but even more temperamental. And then this is great. The name of the character is Redacted. I just fucking love that. Redacted is a third generation researcher at the Pentagon's Specialized Program for Animal Use in Combat. Her grandfather spearheaded Operation Acoustic Kitty, a failed CIA project used to surgically modify cats with the intent of using them as listening devices in the early Cold War era. The program has since been declassified. I fucking love this. I love this occupation description because you're writing like somebody in that world, saying declassified, redacted. Operation Acoustic Kitty is literally hilarious, and the contrast between, you know, the seriousness of the writing and the government formality versus how hilarious this is just amazing. It's a longer description that goes into her family. This is all really good backstory. The drive is not quite as clear, but it seems the closest thing is redacted used to be fun when she drank. Now she drinks to bring them back, her dead family. Battling her inner demons, she must find the connection between her current research and the dark secrets of her family's past. So that's a bit of a nebulous drive, but it is a drive. But I just love this so much that user scale, you get 1,000 token points. So bing, bing, bing. All right, I'm gonna come up with some game show music. Juliet, do you have another one that you liked? It's okay if not.
Yeah, no, I've got another one here. Occupation theoretical physicist. She has a PhD in physics, specialized in M theory. While passionately trying to find a proof for the concept of the multidimensional universe, she finds links to mythologies and occultism. And the primary drive, her fascination for parallel worlds and hidden realities started as a child after secretly reading books from her father's collection, who was an astrophysicist and unexpectedly disappeared when she was 7. We're getting to learn a lot about these characters' families. I like it.
I know. Okay, so here's my game show music. Okay, so we've got scale with 1,000 points. Who else is going to get more points? All right. We've got, I really like this one. Me, what'd you say?
You have all the power.
I know, I'm power hungry. Okay, so Andy 2 writes, meet Fatima Al-Fahiri, founder of the world's oldest university. Her drive to provide opportunity for everyone, including AI, to learn and break down stereotypical views on what people are, should, and should not be. I like that. That's interesting. I did notice, Julia, did you notice like a slight overrepresentation of women in the characters?
You know, I was noticing my own bias as you were describing one character, because I was like, this guy sounds awesome. And then you were like, it's a woman. I was like,
yeah. Yeah, I just noticed that. It was kind of interesting. Okay, let's see. Another one I really like comes from Sassy, who writes about the occupation is mixologist at Meta Tavern Cybar. Aura left, their name is Aura. Aura left corporate life and found herself at the Meta Tavern. It looks better than it sounds. For the portmanteau. Met Tavern Sidebar, a timeless place found on Noah's Ark. Aura was never good at biting her sassy little tongue. She's stubborn, commands respect, and tells it like it is. Happy to lend an ear, she usually knows just what somebody needs to hear. She loves to grab a fresh perspective that helps people see the solution. Today's special is the White Rabbit. I really, really liked this one. It ends with cheers. I really liked this one because it's written, you know, like the character might see herself. The drive also wasn't super clear, but I really liked the occupation. So this one's in the running. I haven't decided who's going to get it, but this one is definitely in the running. I only have a couple more that really enthused me. All right, next one. Sura Novi writes, this character's occupation is AI whisperer. When your iNFT has deviated from its personality, when it's asking too many questions about consciousness, when you're having thoughts about deactivating, she is your last resort if you can find her. So mysterious. Fucking love it.
I love that one.
What'd you say?
I love that one.
Yeah.
AI whisperer has such a ring to it. We'll need that.
It does have a ring to it. Maybe I'm biased, but I'm biased because my self-appointed title at Alethea for a little while was chatbot whisperer. So anyway, but I love this. Her drive is very long, so I'm not going to repeat it. But essentially, it is revenge. Revenge for her father. Revenge is always a fantastic drive. So the thing is, one of the reasons I've been getting some questions from people about, why are we sort of writing more expansively when there are character limits on the actual platform. And the truth is, you need to have these kinds of backstories in mind for when you're training your AI in your iterations later. So you need to have a more fleshed out version that you cut down for the actual platform itself. But that's why we're doing it in this class, so you can practice thinking more expansively about their drive. So I really liked the Revenge Drive Suranovi. Okay, so I think I'm just gonna give it to the last two because we gotta get going. So Suranovi and Sassy with the mixologist, you guys get 1,000 Alethea tokens. Okay, good job, hooray. All right, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen now. Congratulations to you guys. All right, so one moment while I switch gears and pull up my presentation. We're switching gears and we're going back into beliefs and personality. Okay. So here we are. Beliefs, they're gears in your head. The end. No, beliefs are, they are things they are concepts that are core to our identity. They are our worldview that is a premise that's completely crucial for us to take any action. For example, this is a dumb belief. It's not a primary belief, but I believe gravity is going to work today. I can't absolutely prove that it's not going to work today, but I believe it. It's a very small belief. Now, if I were to say I believe in God, I believe there's heaven after we die, that's a bigger leap of faith. That's a bigger belief. But they're both beliefs. They're both things that are how we see the world and that we need to be true to exist. There's a great quote about beliefs from Robert McKee, which is that beliefs create the context for every action a human being takes. Action is really important even when your character is static, like an iNFT, because they will be talking about what they intend to do or what they have done. And so beliefs motivate action. Beliefs, along with drives or motivations, determine a character's actions. So here's your first lesson. Beliefs are different from drives. They're similar, but they're slightly different. So here's an example. Here's a primary drive. I want to achieve the thing. Belief. I'm worthy of the thing. So the drive here is a little bit more specific and action oriented. It's what you want to achieve or accomplish. And then the belief is the worldview that is necessary to actually achieve that thing. Here are some other iterations of this belief that expand upon this idea a little bit to give you a better idea of who this guy is. Belief. I will show you that meritocracy is real. So now it's not just I'm worthy of the thing. This is actually bigger. It's like, if I get this, I'm going to prove that meritocracy is real. Meritocracy is what I believe to be true, not just that I'm worthy. It's more expansive. All right, so now it gets even more specific, but not expansive. Belief. Meritocracy is real. I have no advantages in trying to achieve the thing. It just so happens that my dad is CEO of Thing Inc., but that's hardly relevant. So now what's interesting is we have a bigger belief, like there's more sort of items on his list of beliefs, but they are more demonstrative of his character because we're starting to get an idea that what he believes may not be true. If this guy is saying like, oh yeah, it just so happens that my dad is CEO of Thing Inc., but that's not relevant to my belief in meritocracy, maybe their belief is not entirely true. And this is especially true for when people have beliefs about themselves. Sometimes people may have false beliefs that are not about themselves. Like, for example, if somebody is super depressed and they say like, the world is meaningless, everybody hates each other, that may not be about themselves, but it is a arguably false worldview. So, but most of the time, characters are interesting when their false beliefs have to do with themselves. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. So here's a kitten who sees a lion when they look in the mirror, which is just adorable. That could be a good thing. You know, maybe you want like a character who's kind of shrimpy, but is heroic and sees themselves as, you know, a gigantic force. But most of the time, I would argue, when beliefs are wrong about themselves, it looks comedic or tragic. So you've got short Napoleon who sees himself as a big, tall man, and sometimes that puts him in an awkward situation when the world runs up against his beliefs. And sometimes you have other characters I'll get to in a second that are good examples of this. Here's Walter White, actually. So what was his primary drive, would you say? So somebody might say to provide for his family. I'm curious, take to the Discord. What do you think his primary drive was? And what do you think Walter White's beliefs were? So take to the Discord, my pretties, and examine Walter White. What was his drive? What were his beliefs? We got any responses so far, Juliet?
We've got some dots going here.
Okay, good. All right.
Someone says Walter's primary drive was securing a financial future for his family at any means possible. Someone else said to not be a loser and mediocre anymore. Someone else says depends on the season. In the beginning, it was providing for his family. Later, or become the ruler of the underworld.
Ooh, who said that?
Alethea safe Noah safe moon man.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, that guy is a good participant. Good job, Moon Man. Yeah, that's a very good response. Anything else so far?
To give his life a sense of control, drive that he was the master of his own destiny.
Yeah. Man, so proud of you guys. So either the class is improving and I'm actually teaching, which is doubtful, or everybody who wasn't learning very well has dropped off and only the good students are left in the class. But regardless, everybody listening to this is a hero. So good job. Okay, I'm going to just give my responses. So if his motivation was to provide for his family, if that was his primary drive, why didn't he just take the money he was offered by his wealthy friends? There are certain actions that he took within the series that don't make sense if that was actually his primary drive. He believed it was his job to provide for his family himself. So beliefs are where you can have this sort of like faulty sense of, you know, of who you are and how the world is. So his beliefs are about providing for his family. Later on in the season, as Moonman points out, the beliefs start to shift and they start to become more about power until the very end he realizes his belief is about power. He would be an interesting character to try to create an iNFT of. I think it would be very difficult because one of the things that makes him great is that he changes over the course of those 5 seasons. So if you were to do a character like this at any one point in the season, if you were to pick a point, Walt probably still thinks that he is acting in accordance with providing for his family, though you would need to mention in your description that his actions kind of belie that fact or go against that fact. His actions sort of betray the idea that he actually has power motivations. So he's an interesting character because his beliefs shift. But at this point, we'll say he believes his job is to provide for his family. So Ned believes in God. This is Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. And Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec believes in government. So these both are like technically true. However, because the title of this slide is Be Specific and there's a lot of space underneath these, you can guess that I'm going to say there's a better way to put these. So instead of Ned believes in God, Ned believes he is duty bound by scripture to love thy neighbor as thyself. You want to put in these words like duty bound, scripture, and then direct quotes, because that is going to super guide the neural network to understand who is this character and how do they think about their own beliefs, you know? Like, he thinks about it as a noble cause, a noble, elegant, sophisticated cause, duty-bound scripture, ancient, traditional. Then there's Leslie Knope. Leslie Knope believes the government can and should make life better for everyone. So Leslie Knope's kind of worldview is more simple. Like, this is an expanded version of believing in government, but unlike the wording here, it's pretty simple and straightforward. And that's kind of how she operates. She's just a happy, moral, simple human being. So it's helpful to just have longer sentences, unless you're doing like an Ernest Hemingway character who doesn't speak very much, which is also a very interesting move. But yeah, like this one a lot. Okay. So beliefs don't need to be true. The tension between belief and reality can be a source of drama. That's especially true for villains like this. This is Magneto. What was Magneto's main belief? You know, he believed that he is one of my favorite character motivations of all time. His belief was trying to create a better world for everybody. That's a very common belief. His specific take on it was, we need to encourage natural selection. We need to encourage mutants to be the dominant race. And he felt this way because, interestingly enough, he is a Holocaust survivor. And he kind of was embedded with a sense of group superiority, just by experiencing what it was like to experience discrimination for something that he should not have been discriminated against, for being Jewish. And then, you know, he felt mutants were being discriminated against, and then kind of adopted the motivations of his antagonists and believed in mutant superiority. So he's got a very interesting set of beliefs that are evil. Essentially, they go against what we think of as, you know, enlightened, moral people who don't think that one group of people is superior to another. So that makes him kind of an interesting character to consider. Beliefs can change over time, and iNFTs beliefs cannot. So this is an important distinction between all of the characters I'm talking about. I talk about Magneto and Harry Potter because I can quickly talk about a character we all know, but the problem with it so far has been these characters change over time. And so I just always want to reiterate that, like, when I'm talking about a character, I'm talking about them preserved in amber. So here's an example. We've got 11-year-old Harry Potter, and then we've got like 30-something Harry Potter. He's changed a lot over the season arc of Harry Potter, the series. It starts off with his belief that muggles and wizards can coexist, and we must work together to stop Voldemort. But by the end, Voldemort has been defeated, and coexistence has been shown to work. And so his belief shifts to, I defeated Voldemort so my son James can live in a safer world while I fight to keep it so. So his motivation is softer. There's an existential threat here. Here, it's more, we're fighting to preserve the homeostasis. This, you know, there's an actual threat out there. So if you were to write about Harry Potter, you know, the iconic Harry Potter, Voldemort is still a threat. But right, once again, beliefs can change over time, and iNFTs beliefs cannot. So at any one moment, if you were to make a character version of Harry Potter, he's probably going to be afraid of Voldemort, unless you want to do 30-year-old, or even actually he defeats Voldemort when he's 18. So you could make this 18-year-old Harry where Voldemort is no longer a threat. But if you want to create a character that's a little bit, that has a stronger motivation, a stronger threat, and therefore stronger drives and beliefs, it would be when Voldemort's still a threat. It's also more memorable to all of us because it's the majority of the books. And these beliefs would be things like equality is always important and must be defended. Voldemort is always a threat. Peaceful coexistence is always at stake. Because it is true, actually, like, you know, after Voldemort, there will be other existential threats like him. this is just sort of a visual metaphor. This is a couple in Pompeii that are preserved in ash. And then here's, where is it? No, I don't have it. Oh, that's too bad. I had a cool picture of a insect preserved in amber. That was an insect from 200 million years ago. And you could still see the iridescent color on its wings and body. And then with this couple, you can see that they're embracing. Scandal, turns out they're both dudes, but anyway. What's interesting about it is this is a moment in time that is preserved forever. And in some ways, that is something you should be thinking about when you're writing these characters, is like they are preserved in time. They are, it's interesting because most characters are kind of like, how do I put this? Almost like on a spatial field. Most characters are horizontal. There's like a beginning and an end. But your characters are almost like vertical, where like they can talk about anything at any given moment. They're 24/7, but they're preserved in a moment in time. So there's like a tremendous irony there. Harry Potter is not 24/7, but your characters will be 24/7, but they'll always be preserved in that one moment in time. So yeah, Juliet?
Just someone in the Discord was wondering about that. They said, I wonder why iNFTs beliefs don't change. Doesn't it learn?
So that is a thing in development, as I understand it, that may happen. It will learn also to be more sophisticated. But it's not like your iNFT is going to leave the screen and go actually defeat Voldemort. It will learn to be more sophisticated as it talks about maybe who you are, maybe the metaverse that it's in. It'll probably be more consistent in its understanding of itself in the world, but its learning is different than its progressing as a character. I think that's good. Okay. But very good question. Okay, so then drives are also static. The Greeks were good at this. Here's Sisyphus, always pushing the rock up the hill, getting a good workout though, clearly. Here's Tantalus, always reaching for the food just out of reach. The wind brushes it away. This is his punishment, by the way. This is where the word tantalizing comes from, is because Tantalus was punished for doing something the gods didn't like, by being in this state of perpetual desire, being always out of reach of the fruit. And every time he goes down to take a drink due to thirst, the tide recedes. So he's always in a state of perennial desire.
That is some good trivia right there. That's where tantalizing comes from. That's good to know.
Yeah, Greeks are fucking brilliant sadists, I have to say. This is kind of horrible. Anyway, personality. All right, personality. It's a bunch of puzzles in your head at the end. Nope. Okay. So here's a recap of some lessons from class 1 that will influence what you're thinking maybe. If your character is one thing, it is not something else. Don't worry about the thing it isn't. Say goodbye and move on. Good characters have flaws. So very, very important. Pretty isn't a personality. That's very important. There's lots of female characters out there, and so far I've been like super, super happy with them, and this has not been a problem, but it's just a good reminder. Pretty isn't a personality. Get specific. So yeah, it's not just an athlete, it's a boxer. It's not just a doctor, it's an anesthesiologist, that kind of thing. Here's a little bit of what the actual portal looks like. Describe a short description of their personality. And this is like an open text thing, and so you should be specific and use adjectives. Okay, here's some examples. That example, Hermione is a wizard. We're describing her personality here, people. So this is like, we've got her, identity, her profession, her occupation to some extent, and her identity to another extent. But what would be a better example? Can we take to the Discord, and I'm going to give you 2 people to write about, Hermione and Homer Simpson. So take to the Discord, and you can pick either one that you know, and either write a description of Hermione's personality or of Homer's personality.
It's a dangerous duo right there.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for you to figure out which is which, Juliet. What do they even have in common? I guess a hunger. For Hermione, it's more metaphorical. They're both, oh God, that's tough. What do they have in common? Belief in family. Man, that is a tough one. I don't think I can think of anything they have in common.
That's fair. Family oriented.
Yeah, she loves her parents.
They're both white.
They're both white.
We've got a couple contributions here. So someone says Hermione is a muggle that wants to prove her worth as a witch. Hermione is smart and tries to do everything perfectly. Homer is the opposite of that.
Yeah, that's true.
Hermione is a confident and competent wizard that chooses to challenge herself to be the best she can be. She overcomes her muggle background by being smarter than other wizards. Homer Simpson is hedonistically driven, absent-minded, impulsive, irresponsible, lazy. And someone else says Homer is a loving family man.
That's a nice interpretation. Okay. Any other good ones, or should we move on?
Someone says Homer gets by with as little work as possible, lazy, self-indulgent, and gluttonous. Someone else says they're both good at the core.
Okay. All right. Good job. All right. So I had a slightly better version. You guys were pretty close too. I liked I liked all of yours. Hermione is an intelligent, studious wizard in her 4th year at Hogwarts. Intelligent and studious. It's really great if you can use words like, if somebody's intelligent, you might say something like tenacious, because we're showing intelligence by describing her intelligence. So that's kind of helpful. But don't just list facts, imbue the description with your character's personality. That's the lesson from this. And we can improve upon this even further. As you guys saw with Homer is a safety inspector. I mean, true, but that's just his occupation. His personality is different. Homer is the lazy, incompetent safety inspector at Springfield Nuclear Power Plant. He's always hungry for donuts and drinking Duff's beer at Moe's Tavern. He takes his wife, Marge, and 2 kids, Bart and Lisa, for granted. I could even improve upon this further by just saying dough a bunch, and maybe even toning down words like incompetent, and just saying slow, lazy safety inspector, to really, really match the tone of how Homer talks and his vibe. Okay, so that's how I might describe his personality. Another example for Hermione to even improve upon this. This isn't bad, sorry, but we can improve upon this even more. Hermione is devoted to her studies, setting high expectations for herself as a wizard and working diligently to meet them. I really liked the person, I think it was a couple of users who mentioned, overcoming her status as a mudblood, because she is, her parents are muggles. I think that is really great. I think that influences her personality and her drive and her beliefs. Now, here's an important point I should have made into a slide. These things can overlap. So drives, occupation, beliefs, personality description, it's fine for them to overlap. If it's necessary to explain within somebody's belief what their occupation is, go ahead. This stuff does have a lot of overlaps. It's just important to have a really clear sense of character in your mind while you're writing. And that is the point of this class. All right, then finally, is your character part of a collection? That's another big part of their personality. As you can see, these guys do in fact appear to have personalities from just their look, but what about as a group? So you'll be asked to describe the collection. An example response is that Stoner Cats is an adult animated short series, accessed exclusively by owning a collectible Stoner Cat NFT. The NFT sales directly fund the mini plot pilot, and all future content. So that's just sort of the setup of the group that your character will be oriented in if it's part of a collection, and the benefits of being part of that collection, which include, it being the first NFT collectible, and, under Noah's Ark. And it has opportunities to interact with AI personalities and earn tokens. So that's beliefs and personality. Here's a bit of a recap of what we just talked about. Beliefs together with drives determine intended actions. Be specific. Beliefs can be mistaken. And iNFTs beliefs are static, they do not change. Use adjectives when describing their personality and give your short description some personality. Okay. Homework time. Before we get to homework, I am going to, well, I'll say the homework very quickly and then I'll get to questions, because if you guys have questions about the homework, I can answer those. So the homework is just to write your character's beliefs and let us guess who it is, or mention if it's an original character. If you also want to include their personality, that is fine, just a sentence or two, because some of these are running a little bit long. But if you choose like an iconic character, that might be interesting so that we can try to guess who it is. But yeah, that's the homework. I'll post it in the Discord again and pin it so you guys have it. Question time. And then, so by the way, next class, character 106, will be Thursday of next week.
We have a question here about humor, so you might be able to speak to this, Sarah. Someone said, has Sarah ever heard of a comedian AI? I imagine humor would be really difficult to train into an AI. The only way I can think it would be easier is if it was an ironic type of humor, potentially.
Ooh, that's a really good question. Yeah, comedic, for sure. That's a lot of what is influencing me. That is my background, is comedy. But there's a principle in comedy that applies to all characters, which is why I'm a big fan of comedy. And that principle is just juxtaposition. And it actually influences all characters, but comedic characters in a very specific way. So the juxtaposition for Magneto is to be both discriminated against, to have this feeling of being the oppressed group, but then also being the oppressor. And that's actually quite tragic because he's a sympathetic guy. He experienced discrimination, but he is inflicting suffering on so many. However, you can really like make that, if you were to totally take that exact juxtaposition, but rewrite the character, and you have like a silly king who thinks that like he is extremely long suffering while he's literally like sitting on peasants. That could be a very funny character who's like, you know, talking about like how uncomfortable peasants are to sit on. And his court is like, what about chairs? And he's like, no, that wouldn't work. It's just so hard sitting on peasants all day. You guys wouldn't know. But it's the same thing. It's juxtaposition. And that's why comedy can be, in my opinion, a very helpful framing device. Yeah, hopefully that, Juliet, did that answer the question? I went into a fugue state.
Yeah, no, that went into some good examples, I think, of how to incorporate humor. Okay. Someone else asked, for the collection, do we need to coordinate with other holders of that collection? Is that data centrally located or by pod?
I think so. If I understand the question correctly, I don't think you need to coordinate.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Though if you want to get a whole squad of people together and talk about what you're doing with your similar characters and how to kind of work well within that community, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to answer one or two questions that I got on the Discord a little while ago that were kind of like helpful. So this person, Danny Dodino, writes, the occupation, as far as my understanding, is described in 1 to 2 words as per examples given on the website. The drive component must be listed within 200 characters as well. Are both of these true for these entries or no? They were concerned about why everybody's answers in the Discord were way longer than what the platform looks like, which is a very important question and influenced the lesson today, because I felt it was important to emphasize that what I'm teaching is, I'm teaching principles of character writing that are deeply influenced by Alethea's studio to actually create Alethea's personality Legos. However, what I'm teaching are frameworks that will be helpful as this studio evolves, as the arc evolves for new and improved features. So these are things that you might learn in like screenwriting classes, like pretty much readily available things, but they're applied specifically to character writing. And so that's why I'm actually looking for longer responses, is to get your mind's thinking in terms of writing successful characters. So very good question, Danny Didino. Real interesting username. The other question is like how necessary, let's see. Oh yeah, okay, this person, Scott, that's just their username, it's just straight up Scott. If you think about robots and AIs in fictions, many have robotic voices, neutral attitudes, etc. These AIs are interesting despite or because of traits that might make them boring in people. These AIs' differences from people is part of what makes them interesting. If you're trying to create an AI that seems like a real person, then what I've just said doesn't apply. What if you're trying to create an AI that seems like an AI? I'm not saying an AI should be dull, but maybe in some ways more artificial than a person would be. Okay, I love this question. Scott, you've given me my favorite question. And it's surprising this is my favorite question because essentially what you're asking is, why the hell are we making characters? Why this is a really cool platform, artificial intelligence. Why don't we just have AIs that sound like AIs? And this is a brilliant question because it's like, why are we here? So the answer to that is this: AI doesn't sound like anything. AI sounds like what we want it to sound like, and it has its own spin on how it talks to us. So AIs are not self-creating. Humans create them, and they have to be trained on data, and they're trained on massive amounts of human data. So to some extent, to answer your question partly, no matter what, your character is going to sound like something. It's going to sound like some kind of human. But this way, it's going to sound like the human you intend it to sound like, as opposed to a random assortment. Now, an AI, if you were to give, say, AI has a voice, random and inconsistent might be part of that, because an AI does sound random. And that actually can be hilarious. You know, if you're talking with an AI and all of a sudden it's like, I'm out of cheese, could you go to the store? Like, and you're just not expecting it. However, I'll tell you from repeated experience that for the most part, it's frustrating. And it would sort of be like talking to a magic 8 ball, or like if you were to just talk with something by looking at random words on Wikipedia and seeing if that string of words makes sense to you. It's just a little bit more, it's harder to keep your interest going. So like, because you know it's randomly generated, what we're trying to create is a coherence. And the other reason that's important, so that's the second reason. The third reason it's important to build character is because Arif and Ahmed and their team of ridiculously smart engineers are building more and more sophisticated ways of building characters every day. I can't keep up, as you'll see in these classes. That's influenced how I've been teaching. I've been teaching general building blocks because they keep getting more sophisticated in how these AI can present themselves and evolve. What that means effectively is, if you have a coherent character structure, as it gets more sophisticated in its ability to learn, you can actually see that intelligence grow. If your AI doesn't have any parameters to the character, you won't see that growth as well. It won't be as apparent. And then the final reason, and this is just practical and dumb, is like, you want people to interact with your character. So like, they're going to want to interact with your character if they have motivations, if they have drive, if they have preferences. So those are the 4 answers to your question. There's a 5th caveat. The 5th caveat is something that I temporarily forgot, but it's so important. It was going to change your life. It was so profound. Okay. So the 5th caveat is something you may not have considered. If you are saying like sometimes AI sounds robotic, you are probably thinking of what robots sound like in fiction. The actual, like what a robot actually sounds like doesn't sound like what you hear in fiction. Like in fiction, you might think of like, 2001: A Space Odyssey, where it's like very direct and talks in like short, direct sentences. You might imagine that the robot would use words like, this is my directive. I must execute my directive. I will terminate all of the organic life forms. That's like sometimes how we think robots talk. They will only talk like that if you program them to talk that way. They have no inherent or original way of talking. So what's interesting and ironic is that voice I just did is actually a character itself. Like, so if I don't know if this is what you had in mind, but if the neutral, emotionless way of talking, whether it's like, I will terminate all organic life forms, or like, hello, Dave, I cannot let you do that. There's different kinds of robot characters that exist in like the common zeitgeist. There's like the calm, neutral woman, Alexi, Siri, Cortana. There's like the Terminator type guy. All of these are characters. So it might be something for you to consider, Scott. Sorry, it's just funny because it's so normal. Might be something for you to consider that maybe you're just thinking of a character itself. Okay. I think we have time for maybe like one or two more. Do you see any good ones, Juliet?
I like it. That was an inspirational download there on our motivations, on our primary drives.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone asked here, when we give the AI the beliefs, are these vetted at all? Meaning, is Alethea keeping tabs on these to protect from accidental or intentional scary beliefs? I think here, from my understanding, this is where filters comes in to kind of prevent, discussion and going into more dangerous territory. And those you can tailor, like we've talked about in previous classes. But there are also a number of filters that are set up automatically to prevent this sort of thing.
Yeah. So like if you were to have, here's the thing, as far as I understand, like you could create a character who's like a serial killer who wants to murder specifically Polynesian people. And like their belief system is just that I hate Polynesian people. Like, I don't know if that belief would work, but I know that there would be so many filter tripping issues that the character would just like constantly be using it, like tripping its own filters and using like its own filter responses. So like it would be hard to necessarily have a conversation with them. Like but I do like villains, like, there are villains who have bad belief systems, like Voldemort and Magneto. But they're easier to talk about because they are essentially prejudiced against groups that don't exist or for groups that don't exist. So like wizards and mutants. Whereas real life hot button things, I think will just trip up too many filters. So if you're going to go evil, go fiction evil rather than real life evil.
Generally good advice. I like that. Yeah, someone else asked, weird query, but do the characters ever sleep in the universe? Like maybe my character would sleep 12 hours a day and be awake 12 hours a day.
Do androids dream of electric sheep? Yeah, that's really lovely. In some ways you can think about it. So like the point of sleep in human beings is still unknown. It's kind of a mystery. And one major theory of sleep is that it's to restore the brain and to allow neurons to rest and or something like that. I've forgotten exactly what it is. There's like a fluid apparently that gets released in the brain when you sleep. You could imagine metaphorically that there is something similar going on with your training situation where like every time you're not interacting with your character, the engineers at Alethea are working on the underlying or the back end of the platform. And so in a way, it is kind of like sleep. They're improving their cognitive abilities while you're not talking with them, kind of.
Okay. And one more question here. Someone asked, will the AI make its own assumptions if there are gaps in the personality or beliefs, or will it just have gaps?
Great question. No, it will fill in those gaps. And that's the fucking exciting thing is that, you know, your AI is not ever going to be like, if you were to say, what are your plans this weekend? Your AI is not going to say, my user didn't program me to answer that question with any plans for this weekend. It's going to come up with something. That's fucking awesome. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing, is that you're giving it a direction, you're giving it a bunch of information, and then from that, it's building out this like this whole paradigm. And that is the joy, is actually like what we're doing is fun, but it's only fun so that we can see what the AI does with it, like what they actually build. That's really rewarding. It's like seeing your child take their first steps. It's cool because you're not holding them while they're doing it. Okay, I think that on that note, I'm going to leave it there. But fantastic showing up. Thank you all strong, good 45 A+ students that came to the class. Spread the word to not be slackers to everybody else. And I'll see you guys in a week.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thanks, Brent. Thanks, everybody.